I bought another Pepsi today for you.
Another Pepsi, because,
I
we
know.
don't have enough Pepsis.
I know, right?
I know how much you love it.
It was too much. I had to get it.
Oh no, what is it?
Pepsi Caramel Punch.
What?
I know, right? That's why I had to get it. It's going to be a punishment.
So, yeah, I think we do that one next week then.
Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 28.
Everyone has things that they're passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can get just one more person
to join us on our hill to die on. So what's next with your Synology?
Oh, Ryan, it is definitely a roller coaster.
Yeah. So you told me that your Synology basically went kaput.
Yeah. And it's been 3 weeks since we last recorded, and not much has moved in this front. Nothing has changed. The Synology is still on my desk. This time it's in pieces. We'll get to that in a second here.
Oh, I should mention that I'm currently not planning on going back to America, so don't rely on me for smuggling anything for you this winter.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. It was the worst case that I had feared. At least, so in talking to Synology support, they had said that, yes, yours needs to be serviced. And now, because I made the decision to buy this model in America, I cannot get it serviced in Japan. And actually, I'm very curious as to what would have happened if I had bought it in Japan, because through this discussion, I found out that Japan does not actually have a service center. So I don't even know what would have happened if I had bought it in Japan. Would I have mailed it to the Japanese office and then they forwarded it on to a service center somewhere? Possibly, that's my guess, because this is a warranty repair. So I'm guessing I would have mailed it, or they would have come picked it up and sent it off to wherever repairs happen. I don't know where that is. Not in Japan, I guess, because apparently they don't do repairs in Japan. So anyway, talking to America, they said, okay, because you bought it in America, you have to ship it back to Japan and you have to pay the shipping. Even though if you were in America, it would be free shipping because it's a warranty repair. But because you're not in America, you have to pay for all of the shipping. And in looking at the quotes for shipping, they're going to charge me $233 each way. Then I'm talking almost $500 just for shipping charges, which $500, yeah, I could buy another Synology for that amount of money. Not a great one, but still a good one. So I was not excited about that. And then in realizing that this is going to take forever, I've been looking around for what would it mean to buy another Synology now and have one up and going. But that's a tough situation because all the Synologies that fit what I have now, like if I were to buy a Synology that would just take the drives out of my current one, put them in a new one and be up and going again, all of those Synologies that work that situation are all just 2 years old. Like this month, they're 2 years old. Any day now, the new model is coming out. So why am I buying a model now when the new model is coming out the next day? I don't really want to do that. So there's really no good solution for that. So I could buy, what I have been thinking about, or what I had been thinking about, was possibly buying a 4-bay unit. But that means I need to buy new drives right away because I can't move my existing drives into the 4-bay unit. I have to set up new drives and recover my backup. But even that's not a great solution. I'm spending a lot for a unit and then a lot for drives. So for something that I'm not sure I really need, I don't really need another unit. I would prefer to get an upgrade of my existing unit. I'd prefer to get, the new one that's due out at the end of this month probably. If I'm going to buy something, I want to buy that one. And I don't really want to impulse purchase something. So I nixed the option of buying another unit just to keep me going. So I talked to Synology. I kept moving up the chain too. I was talking to a guy and I said, no, he can't help me. So I was like, great, can I talk to your boss? I kept working up the chain and I presented a bunch of options to them. Like why can't I just ship it to the Japanese place and have them fix it? Or ship it to the Japanese place, have them verify that it's broken, and then you just ship me a new one. Like, do you need the old unit back? Like what's the actual necessity here? Like, do you need to prove that the old one's broken? Do you need to prove that the old one's disposed of? Do you want the parts from the old one still? Like, what's actually required here? So we ended up coming to an agreement after a few weeks of back and forth that, and me fearing all along that what I'm going to have to do is wait for somebody to go to America like you, have them bring it in their luggage, and then have Synology pick it up from wherever you're going to be, you or somebody like you, or wherever you're going to be, and then, hopefully that person would stick around long enough to receive another unit back, which is not a guarantee, because I'm expecting it to take like a week and a half to 2 weeks probably, right? So I'm not sure somebody's going to be in America that long.
Not with our current environment, no.
Yeah, and then want to bring it back with them. Like that's, yeah, so now I'm taking up a luggage on both ends, which is not exciting. That was my worst. I was thinking that was going to be what was happening, but then she surprised me, the lady I've been dealing with recently. One of my options I said to them later on was, what if I just mail you the motherboard, since that seems to be what's broken? And then she actually relented on that. She said, okay, yeah, sure, you can mail the motherboard. And then she relented on that, and then I checked the RMA thing again, and it still said $233 of shipping. And I was thinking, this is where they're going to get me. You're going to say, oh yeah, you can mail the motherboard, but you're still going to pay all the fees. And I'm like, well, then what's the point, right? But then actually she came back and said, oh, we're sorry. We'll actually do a custom quote for you. Here's the custom quote for shipping. And all that together added up to about $150 of shipping for both directions. And I was like, okay, $150. It's not zero, but it's way better than $500 of shipping. And $150 to get my unit to last another 2-3 years. I think I'm willing to pay that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that. Early this week, we settled on that. I agreed on the quote. I said, yep, I'm ready to go. But I took my Synology apart. There's one main motherboard, and there's a few there's a board where all the drives plug in, and then there's a board where the fans plug in. I took all those boards out and took the pictures, and I said, which one do you want? And she said, oh yeah, only the main motherboard. We don't need the other two boards. So I put them back in my Synology. It comes apart very nicely, actually. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. But yes, the Synology comes apart. You just take screws out and things come right out. It's very nice. So then they sent me a PayPal invoice. And I said, oh, okay, no problem, PayPal. Done this a bunch of times. I'll pay this. And I clicked pay. I sent her an email, said, I've paid. You can look for the payment. You should get it. I went to school that morning, didn't think anything of it. I get the emails from my Japanese bank whenever I use the debit card like that without a swipe. And I saw it go through. And then I got another email right back that said the same amount of money that I had sent out, that I had just paid, was deposited back. And I figured, PayPal must have just done a hold, or Synology, either PayPal or Synology, must have just done a hold to say, yes, he's good for that amount of money. I'm returning it now, and I'll charge it again later, right? That was my guess. Weird, but okay. I told her I paid. She emails me the next day, because again, every time I email America, right, they don't get back to you till the next day, because they're sleeping by the time I've emailed them, and they're sleeping by the time I've read it and emailed them back, right? So it takes a day, all these things, right? So she emails me back, says, we didn't get any payment. And I said, well, that's weird, because I definitely clicked the pay button. So I go to my PayPal account, and sure enough, I look in my transactions, and it's as if nothing happened. So I was like, that's weird. Like, it would have at least shown in history, right? Like, something happened. But there's nothing in transactions. So I was like, okay, I'll do it again. So I clicked pay again, because I know I didn't lose money, because it got deposited right back. So I know I haven't lost any money, and they say they haven't gotten it. So okay, so I'll try it again. Tried it again, the same exact thing happened. I watched the emails from my bank come in, say the money went out, and the money came back in. And then I look in transactions, and nothing happened. So then I add another Japanese credit card to my Japanese PayPal. Try it again, the same thing happens on that credit card. I had to go look at that statement, but still the same thing happened. Then I said, well, fine, I'll pay in dollars. I don't really want to pay in dollars, because that means I have to convert the money to dollars later. So I go to my American PayPal account, log in, do the same thing, and sure enough, it happens again. The money goes out, the money comes right back in. So I was like, Argh. I didn't actually have my American credit card in my PayPal account. It was withdrawing directly from my bank. I could see it come out of the bank and go back in the bank. So then I was like, fine, well, I'll add my American credit card to my PayPal account. So I added my American credit card, and same thing, money came out of the credit card, went right back in the credit card. So I was like, this is really frustrating. So yesterday I call up PayPal Japan, and I said, what's the deal? Oh, they said, the credit card company is rejecting the payment. I'm like, well, that's weird, because that's like every credit card company, right? Like 2 totally different banks in Japan and an American credit card in an American bank are all rejecting it. Okay, fine. I'll believe that for a little while. I call up the American credit card company and I say, what's the deal? And they're like, no, we didn't reject it. We see the money going in and out, but it wasn't us. And I tend to believe them, because it's happening with lots of different credit cards. It's not just the one. So then I asked Synology to send me a direct, I said, send me your PayPal account and I'll just make a payment. So not pay an invoice. I'm just going to make a direct payment to that account because I figured that would work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried that this morning, and of course it doesn't. And I've tried with all of my accounts again, all of my payment methods, and it still doesn't work. And now I'm really frustrated in PayPal. I can't pay them. It's unbelievable. So this is where I am today. So now I'm going to email them and say, I have no idea why. It is not my fault. I've tried multiple credit cards, multiple payments, and it is rejecting me. I've tried not putting a shipping address in, putting a shipping address in. I've tried every single combination I can think of. My wife keeps coming to me because she knows I'm frustrated. She says, well, did you try this? And I'm like, yes, unfortunately, I've tried that. And I've tried, with this card and with this card. My goodness, this is frustrating. So now we've actually come to a solution, and I can't pay them. I can't even get to the next step again. If it's not one thing, it's another. But I do hope that by the next time we record, I'll at least have it shipped out. Whether I've received another motherboard or not, I'm at least hoping that I have shipped out my broken motherboard to them so that they can receive it. But man, it's frustrating.
I'm sorry. I have never had PayPal issues like that.
Yeah, I've had PayPal issue here or there, but it's been explainable, or we've gotten beyond it. We did it another way and it worked. I feel like with PayPal, there's always a way that you can get it to work, whether you take out the shipping address, or you pay with a different card, or you don't use the bank account, you pay with the card, you need to use a bank account or whatever. There's always buttons you can click that can make it happen.
Yep. There's always something you can do and make it better.
Right. And I feel like this time I've tried everything. It's just unbelievable. I've tried 2 different methods on the American one, 2 different cards on my Japanese one. I've tried Chrome and Safari. It's like, yikes. Like, what else is there to do? Like, how come this happens? But I've gotten tons of emails now from my bank saying the money went out, the money went in. And I've kept all of them for now because I at least want to have the record. But it's pretty funny. My wife keeps asking me, look at this. There's a withdraw on a deposit. What was that? I was like, yeah, that's me trying again. Oh, okay. So, Anyway, anything else going on? What do you got going on?
Basically, for me right now, I've been trying to keep up with writing my lessons, especially for the programming class. The politics class, since I've taught that for now 3 years, this is fortunate enough that pretty much we're in a good place where we do some minor tweaks each year, make it a bit better, but for the most part, we're about where we want to be.
Are you doing anything special for election?
We're not doing anything too special for it, simply because, especially for our school, we do try to be internationally focused as much as we can. Politics class, I say as much as we can because it is taught by 2 Americans. We do have an understanding of the American system. And because we're 2 Americans, it's easiest to define things according to the American system, simply because it is a good base level example. We do try to stay away from being too America-centric, simply because, we are a international school in Japan. We represent a whole bunch of different cultures, all that sort of stuff. But I've showed them things. So, for example, the most recent thing I did for the election was I showed them bits and pieces from the debates. The debates were
riveting.
They were aggravating.
Yeah, aggravating. That's a much better word to describe it.
They were so aggravating. So I showed them some of that, and then I showed them something that I felt was a great example of what we hope debates, specifically presidential debates, should be. And what I did was I went into my library of the things that I own in Apple.
Is it like West Wing or something?
It is West Wing.
Oh.
Season 7, Episode 7 of The West Wing. It is basically where you have Vinnick and Santos who are doing a presidential debate. So Vinnick and Santos, one is Alan Alda. Have you watched this?
No, I haven't watched any West Wing.
Basically, what happens in this episode is they say, let's have an open debate about what we believe. We're not going to follow any of the traditional rules. We're not going to do this or that and just say our stances. No, we want to have an open debate about this. And so they actually debate their stances. And the reason why I really like it is because, first of all, it does present a pretty balanced view of what both sides believe. But also, one of the things that I really love is at the very end, what Alan Alda says is something along the lines of, now you've heard both our stances tonight, and the thing I want you to remember is we both want what's best for America. We just have different beliefs about how that is best achieved. And that kind of dignity, that kind of grace is just something that is beautiful and something that we don't see in reality.
And missing. And missing right
yeah.
now.
And so I told the students, this is what we aim for, this is what we hope for, but this is not what we're seeing right now. And so as you grow older, as you are the ones voting, as you are the ones being involved in politics in the world and whatever you choose to do, remember that the other people, even if they disagree with you, are human beings deserving of respect by that mere fact. So treat people right, treat people good, and remember that usually we don't have people who are, the other side isn't evil.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We all want what's best. We just have different views of what's best.
So this drink today, Ryan.
What are you making me drink today?
This is the last of the summer drinks.
Yeah, last of the summer drinks, and it's almost November.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But because there was a bunch of these salty drinks out in the summer, and I think this is one that was trying to be along with those. But this is Pepsi, Salt and Litchi. Lychee is a very weird fruit that I didn't see much in America. I've only seen it here a lot.
Yeah, I've Googled pictures of lychee just so I can try to understand it, because I don't think I've ever even eaten lychee.
Oh no, I'm sure you have. It's in fruit salad all the time in Japan. It's the white fruit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's often in fruit salads in Japan, or like Jello cups, or
I just don't even think about it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going out and buying lychee.
No, I haven't ever bought lychee. But if you're eating like a Jello cup with fruits in it, it'll be in there. It's in the restaurants.
Gotcha. Now I know exactly what you're talking about because I know my fruit cups.
Yep. Yeah, I've never bought one, and I've never peeled one and made it myself, but I've had it a bunch of times. See, and I don't think I've ever had it in America.
No, I've never had it in America.
I've only had it since coming here. But anyway, yep, Salt and Litchi. This is a Pepsi, one of those Japan Cola Pepsis.
Lychee is the sole member of the genus Litchi in the soapberry family.
And I think it's got like a hard brown shell too.
The pictures I'm seeing are like a bright red shell
okay.
that then is sliced open to see a black seed.
Okay, white fruit around a black seed?
Yeah. The outer shell looks, at least from these pictures, like a red bumpy shell that has a white flesh and then a black seed.
So yep, I think this is going to be weird. Maybe it'll taste good. Maybe it'll taste refreshing. Because lychee's not bad.
Well, if it is, then we'll never get it again.
Yeah, because they're not in the stores anymore already.
It's not summer anymore.
I bought this a long time ago.
Is it still valid? Has it gone bad yet?
No, we got a few months on that still. It smells like Pepsi.
Smells like Pepsi.
Oh, by the way, this is 490 milliliters because, why put 500 milliliters in a 500 milliliter bottle?
On the positive side, it's not a 0-calorie Pepsi.
Oh, that's true. That is a positive side. You might have found one redeeming value. All right, let's see. What do you think? Tastes mostly like Pepsi.
Tastes like Pepsi. I'm trying to find the extra flavors.
Maybe a little bit of lychee, but I don't taste any salt.
Yeah, I am tasting very little lychee and no salt.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly it tastes like a Pepsi.
Yes, I agree with you. So disappointing.
That's kind of disappointing.
Yes, I agree.
I'm saying that for a different reason than you are, I think. Let's clarify. I'm saying it's disappointing because I was hoping for a unique flavor.
Yes. I am saying that too, but I'm also mine has a second.
You're just saying that because you don't like Pepsi.
Like Pepsi.
Yeah, I was hoping for something unique, something special, something that stands out. Like apple pie Kit Kats.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, if you haven't had those are fantastic.
No, I haven't had them. I'll have to try.
This is Pepsi.
This is lacking any standoutness.
This is Pepsi with like a hint of something different in the mix.
Which is definitely not what I was hoping it was going to be.
No.
And now I'm concerned that
Now I'm concerned about the next drink, too,
weeks, we have more Pepsis that are... Oh.
So everyone can look forward to this exciting turn of events. We have 3 Pepsis in a row stocked up for various flavors.
Man, maybe we should get some backup drinks just in case. I'm a bit more disappointed in the uniqueness problem than the actual Pepsi.
I'm very disappointed in the uniqueness. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. Nope, it's not.
I give it a 2, Ryan. Because I will drink it, but...
Now, here's the thing. A 2 is mighty low.
Oh, that's a good point.
If you're going to drink it, it would have to be at least a 3 or a 4.
You might be right.
Unless Pepsi is just bringing it down that low.
Now, probably Pepsi's not bringing it down that low.
Because it tastes like a normal Pepsi to me.
It's not as bad as the extra honey CC lemon.
No. I would say that for me, this is feeling like a solid 4. Here's what I would say. It's a 4 for drinkability. It's a 1 for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I was hoping for fun. They stole my fun from me. Pepsi, you have failed me for the last time.
Well, possibly not, but still.
I hope for the last time.
One can only hope. So, Ryan, what have you been playing?
No. It's not what I've been currently playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I've been currently playing is barely anything. I've been trying to keep up with, teaching? Classes? That sort of thing. But let's talk about some great games from the past. Just telling you about some of the things that I've really loved. And I felt like today's a good day to talk about BioShock.
Okay.
BioShock came out many years ago now. I want to say like 2008, 2009 was the first time the original BioShock came out. Really great game. So first of all, the basic story is the game starts and your plane that you are on crashes. And you crash in the middle of the ocean and you basically swim to a lighthouse that it has crashed near. And you go into an underwater city called Rapture. Rapture had been built in the 1940s by a man named Andrew Ryan, who basically wanted to create a utopia where basically you weren't taxed by the government and you weren't forced into any sort of morality systems, that you could just basically allow free business to thrive. This being said, they created some interesting things where they found some ways to do genetic manipulation, which included things like being able to launch thunderbolts out of your fingertips because, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So when you arrive, however, the world has basically gone insane down there. And you are traveling through the shattered remains of what used to be this city under the water, this utopia that they had created under the water, or what they thought was a utopia under the water. And you travel through trying to basically figure out what's going on and find Andrew Ryan and hopefully find a way back home. That's the premise of the game. And now for spoiler territory, because I'm going to spoil the game that is now over 10 years old. So if you do not want to listen to this spoiler, skip ahead now.
Mm-hmm. Or just skip to the next chapter.
Skip to the next chapter. All right, are we good now? I think we're good.
I think they left.
So, here's the thing. When you first crash, you are greeted by a voiceover from a guy named, I believe it's Atlas, is what he calls himself. Anyway, it's been years since I played this game, but it's a fantastic game. But Atlas basically is constantly trying to direct you certain ways. And eventually it is revealed that you have been conditioned and brain controlled by Atlas because you actually were born in Rapture and then sent out and called back to eventually kill Andrew Ryan because you are Andrew Ryan's child who was then conditioned, basically brainwashed to kill him because being of his genetic code, you were the only one who could basically get close to him. So the reason why I love this is because throughout this game, you are in a first-person view. You're able to do everything. You're able to control everything. Everything you do has meaning, has value. until the moment you come face to face with Andrew Ryan. You have just figured out that you've been brainwashed and that the key word has been said, basically triggering you. You have no option but to kill him. And it's at that moment that you go into basically a cutscene where your free will, your control is taken away from you, and you just have to watch as your character murders the man who is your father. It is that beautiful moment, not beautiful in what is shown on the screen, but beautiful in storytelling. It's that moment that is just amazing to me because it is a piece of storytelling that is done through the very mechanics of the game. Your control is the one thing you can rely on throughout that entire game. And then the moment that this happens, that control is stripped from you to tell you, you are brainwashed, you have no choice, you must do this thing. And I think that as a storytelling device is fantastic. There are a total of 3 BioShock games. The one that I just described is the first BioShock game.
Yeah, because I've heard this before. It's not just one game. There's a few.
Mm-hmm. But some interesting things are, so like I said, you get some genetic manipulation so you can launch thunderbolts out of your hands. I mean, it's not just that. You can also throw fire. You can send bees out of your hand. Because of all powers, they thought, being able to summon bees, that's what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And fire them out of my fingers.
Yes, I want to be able to, fire bees out of my fingers. I'm going to be honest, if I could choose a superpower, that's not at the top of my list.
No, not really. Not me either.
Yeah, I want to fire tornadoes of bees at my enemies. Hello, bees. No, I will pass on that one. It's a fantastic game, great storytelling devices. I think the first and the third games are probably the best of the 3. The second game is good, but not quite as good as the other 2.
I mean, it sounds interesting that you are playing, you're watching through your eyes, doing something you didn't mean to do, huh?
Yeah, it's a very brutal scene, actually. But it gets the point across very well because you are watching yourself do something you don't want to do. Mm. And I think because it is trying to get across this idea of brainwashing, that is done so well. Mm. Other games where it's not trying to do something like that, if they did something where they forced you to do something that you didn't want to do, it actually takes away from the character narrative a bit, I think. Mm. But, we'll talk about that another day, I think.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds fun.
All right, let's invite the others back.
So today we're going to pick 2 times we've shot at someone because of our media that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, I've definitely shot no one.
Me neither. Okay, good. Moving on.
All right, we're done. So we do want to make something that relates to our media for our pick 2. So we thought about times that we've shot somebody. No times. We could have done times that we were dumb and made a dangerous or slightly illegal mistake as foolish youths.
I can't even say times I've held a gun. I can't even go there.
Yeah, no.
Even a wanted weapon.
The most weapon I have held is when I was a younger man. I had a lovely collection of knives and swords.
Lego knives and swords?
No, real ones.
Okay.
Somehow people kept gifting me swords and knives, and somehow I ended up with a collection, and then I bought a few myself because, why not? And, eventually I got rid of them, or I think I left them in America when I moved here, and I'm not really sure what happened to them. If they're all gone, I don't really mind anymore. Mm-hmm. Because, again, most of them I got because people gave them to me in one way, shape, or form. But it is what it is.
So anyway, we did really pick something this time.
Yes. So we decided that we should probably pick 2 of our previous jobs.
Yep.
The movie we're going to talk about centers around someone who ends up leaving home, but he searches for jobs a lot throughout the movie. So
even Natsumi is looking for a job throughout a lot of the movie.
Yeah. Really, a lot of the characters are all looking for jobs throughout the movie.
Actually, you're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we thought we would talk about jobs we've had in the past. The real question is, which of the jobs are we going to talk about?
Yeah, which is interesting because we've actually hinted at some of our previous jobs in the past, I think. So this will be good. I'm kind of curious as to which ones you're going to pick.
Yeah, because I've had a lot I have had one of those lives where I've ended up with a lot of different jobs. I started working when I was 13. I worked at several camps and bopped around at camps for summer jobs for many years. But, I think it's important to start with the one that I did for many years, and that was being a barista.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a barista at 3 different coffee shops, 4 if you count a volunteer one, but 3 different coffee shops in the past that I was actually gainfully employed at. The very first one I worked at was Caribou Coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you find so few of these days.
Yeah, well, I didn't know about Caribou Coffee until I took that trip out to St. Olaf for that long road trip we talked about a few episodes back. So that was the first time I'd heard of Caribou Coffee because we went to finally places where they had it, out in Chicago and that area out there.
Mm-hmm. I worked at Caribou Coffee for 1 year, and it was not a very profitable location, probably because we were in a strip mall and there was a Starbucks like 3 buildings down from us.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
So probably not the best of locations for that place. How I always envisioned it was Caribou Coffee was similar to Starbucks in the way that it was designed to be more of a fast turnover coffee, except Caribou tends to be more of also a welcoming environment to kind of get people to come on in, sit down, relax, do your studying here. It was more geared towards that kind of environment, which, given if you're trying to price your coffee at the same place as Starbucks and yet you want to have a slower, more relaxed atmosphere, it tends to be contradictory on those 2 levels. Mm-hmm. So really, it was a lovely place, though. Some very interesting coworkers that I worked with. But that was my first one. Then I worked at a Barnes & Noble coffee shop for a year. And then the final one that I worked at was I did work at a Starbucks.
But not the one next to Caribou Coffee?
No, they were all in different towns, actually. The Barnes & Noble was in the town that I went to college in. The Starbucks was in the town where my parents lived after I had graduated from college, because I alluded to this probably in the episode where I talked about how I ended up in Japan the first time, the one with Casey.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from college and ended up looking for a job and ended up at the Starbucks near my parents' house and worked there for a year while looking for a more permanent job. All 3 were good experiences. I will still say to this day that the experiences I had there definitely were great. Getting experience in any type of food service, I think, is very important for anyone who is just getting their first job. I think about that every time I think about how some of my students don't seem to know how to pick up after themselves, or when I think it'd be really nice if they treated people in the cafeteria a different way because they don't realize exactly the struggles behind working in a cafeteria or working in any sort of food service. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great experience for anyone in that level. I will say one of the things that I do not miss about Starbucks and all of the coffee shops that I worked at were the particularness of certain customers.
You mean the really long orders?
Well, yes, there was the really long orders, but also because of the really long orders, I would tend to try to get it perfect. Mm-hmm. And I am a bit of a perfectionist. I will acknowledge that. And so when they give me the really complicated order, I will try to make sure it's absolutely perfect. I'll follow all the steps perfectly. But I will perhaps, because of that, I would do it slower than the rest of the customers or my bosses would have preferred, which was my constant struggle at Starbucks, not just Starbucks, but all of them, was the fact that I felt constantly stressed because I was constantly needing to rush, and the rushing and giving a good product were contradictory to me. I never quite found the way to do it fast and do it well at the same time. And so I always leaned into doing it very well, which, I think as a customer I would have preferred. I'm always a person who, if it takes an extra 5 minutes, I don't care. And yes, the coffee never took 5 minutes because it was like an extra 30 seconds. How dare you, sir? Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed being a barista. I still feel like if you put me in front of an espresso machine, I could still make a pretty darn good drink. But I did it for years, and I'm quite happy not to go back to it. I will make it for myself and no one else now.
You made it in our office occasionally, didn't you?
I believe I did make it occasionally in the office before we had an additional coffee pot brought up, but when I originally worked at the school in Japan, the public Japanese school, I had a French press on my desk at that school. So, I have a problem. I have a problem.
I think the job I'm going to talk about first is a job that when I came to Japan in college, I came in the spring semester, but of course the Japanese system, spring semester starts in April, which makes complete sense to me now. Didn't quite understand it back then, but spring semester starts in April and finishes in July. So I had some time off of college between when the fall semester ended at my college and then I had to leave for Japan. So I got a job near my house while I was waiting to go to Japan. And I don't think I've ever told you this, actually. I got hired as a web developer for the web development branch of a financial services company. So their main job was to develop software for banks, but what I did was I worked in the web development branch that made the websites for those banks. And that branch also made websites for other companies as well. Whoever wanted a website, they would hire out. And this must have been 2001. Yeah, spring of 2001. So this was not early on, but I guess it must have been after the bubble. But still, we were laying out websites with tables, right? This is what I remember. is building your website in Photoshop, splitting it up, and then laying it out in tables. Yep, that's what I remember doing. No concept of a responsive layout, that's for sure. Oof. You were designing for desktop screens. And the biggest thing that we would deal with is making sure it worked in multiple browsers, right? Having all of the attributes in your table to make sure that table border equals 0 was always there, so that when you looked at it in whatever browser, I don't remember even what it was, maybe Firefox, that automatically inserted borders, or what was it, Internet Explorer that always put borders on images that had links on them that had, were inside the anchor tag. And oh my goodness, driving me nuts. But yeah, cross-browser compatibility was the biggest thing I dealt with at that company. And if you ever watched Office Space, which is a fairly funny movie, but it is a bit crude.
How dare you?
Well, Michael Bolton. Anyway, that work environment was just like that. in terms of the mix of people. Okay, in terms of the camaraderie of those core guys, let me say it that way. I didn't have a boss that would come up to me and say, "Can you work on the weekends?" Nobody did like that, but I had that blonde-haired kind of excited guy, and I had the Indian guy who really knew everything. And so the camaraderie of those guys, yeah, it was just like that. Like, it was pretty funny. When I watched that movie in college, I was like, oh my goodness, I worked in that place.
So my question right now is, so you were developing for different browsers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, were you developing for the Netscape browser?
Oh yeah.
Opera?
No, I don't think we did Opera. Possibly. I remember that the Netscape Navigator tools, I used them in college to develop stuff.
Let's see, Netscape Navigator, it looks like it really stopped being supported around 2007, 2008.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure we used it. I think Navigator was our primary browser, but then of course you had to make it work in Explorer, and I guess it was Opera. I don't remember. There was a third browser that we would be concerned about.
2001. So the ones they're listing would be things like Internet Explorer, Opera, Galleon?
Galleon? I don't remember that one.
I don't know. I'm just looking through the list of various Netscape.
It must have been Netscape, Internet Explorer, and Opera. But man, it was annoying. It was super annoying. And, and we're talking simple stuff, right? I mean, compared to what we do now, right? This was simple stuff. HTML4, right? I mean, this is nothing fancy. Yeah, we're talking tables and how do you get the image to repeat. The hidden GIF, the transparent GIF that you would put everywhere to size things. Yeah, that's what we did still back then. I mean, this is nothing, considering what we do now, it's nothing compared. So yeah, it was quite an interesting place to work. After watching Office Space, I was like, man, those are the same people. It was pretty funny.
I didn't have anything like that, I don't think. Okay, I guess my next one.
Mm-hmm.
Picking my second one is a little tricky because I actually have two more I wanted to talk about, so I was trying to decide between the two. So I think I'm going to choose the funnier one. So during my college days, I worked in what effectively was our school campus boiler room.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You shoveled coal into the boiler room?
No, we did nothing of this sort.
Okay, good. Sorry.
Like I said, I had a lot of really odd jobs throughout my life. Like, I worked in a homeless shelter for a year. I worked in Japan in the public schools, and that was a whole lot of fun. But the one that has the most interesting stories is this boiler room. So the boiler room was basically the job that I had because it was a on-campus job, and so I didn't have to drive anywhere to get to it. And it was also the job that they had the most awkward hours, and so you could go to your classes and they could be really late night classes, and then you would still go to work because the work shift would be somewhere between like 10 o'clock at night and 4 in the morning.
Whoa, okay.
You know, because that's
what college kids can do, yeah.
That's a healthy lifestyle for a college student.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I would often have those like middle of the night shifts, which I would only do it like 2, 3, maybe 3 to 4 nights a week at most. I'm trying to remember. It's been a number of years since this. Anyway, the reason why I bring the boiler room up is basically my whole job was this. We need a warm body in the room to make sure that if something goes wrong, that you can alert the proper person to stop the boilers from blowing up.
Wow, really?
That was basically the main part of my job. To be awake and around in case alarms started going off.
Would you wake up if the alarms started going off?
No, I wouldn't have. I am a hard sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a story time. Around the same time, when I was in college, somebody apparently pulled the fire alarm in the middle of the night, and my roommate and the RA did not see me because I had the pile of like comforters over top of me, and I slept through that entire fire alarm. Everybody lined up outside, and nobody noticed Ryan was not there. Yeah, I am a hard sleeper. What can I say? Anyway, basically, since my job was mainly just to be awake and be there, but they wanted us to keep busy. We were not supposed to be doing homework. We were not supposed to be doing anything that would distract us from basically being aware of what's happening around us. We basically were told during your 6-hour shift or whatever, you need to be cleaning or stripping wire, and then every hour on the hour you had to basically walk around and take down the readings from all of the various gauges around the room. Really boring stuff. But I ended up stripping so much wire at that place that I ended up making a snowman out of wire. I cleaned everything, including like the girders that hung above the boilers, which in retrospect I probably shouldn't have been climbing those, but you know, you're a college-age student and you do stupid things. But probably the most entertaining story was the time that we had just finished repairing one of the boilers, and so we had a scaffolding. So me and one of my friends who was also working in the boiler room, we were told, you guys need to take down the scaffolding for me. You'll get a little extra pay for this, but take down the scaffolding. So we go in, we start taking down the scaffolding, and we basically just formed a little line. He would take the piece apart and then lower it down to me. I would take it away and put it away. Nice and easy. The problem was he didn't realize that on one of the pieces that was on the scaffolding was broken on one end. So he basically pulled up sharply on the one end that was hooked in and didn't realize the other end wasn't hooked in. So he pulls up sharply, it comes unhooked on the other end and just comes swinging down. I ended up taking a piece of scaffolding to the forehead.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry, this has a good ending to the story. I lived.
Yes. Well, that can't be the only good ending to the story, but okay. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I still find this story hilarious because of how I reacted to this whole thing. So I take a scaffold to the forehead. I start bleeding a bit.
Only a bit?
No, it was quite a bit because it was a head wound.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that deep, but it was deep enough, and it was on the skull that, there was blood. So I do what any logical, smart, college-age student does. I took my shirt, wrapped it around the wound, and finished the job. Uh-huh.
And were there any consequences of that inaction?
No, actually, I finished. I got it cleaned out and got a bandage later. I do have a slight scar near where what is left of my hairline is, but it's light enough that nobody notices. And the best part about this whole thing? I don't remember if I've told this story to my folks, and I know that they listen to this podcast.
They're going to learn about it.
Yeah, they're going to learn about this story, and they're going to probably freak out that I didn't tell them earlier. The most important thing is to wait 10 years before you tell your parents anything.
You didn't need stitches at least, huh?
No, well, I should have, but no. No, I mean, I just cleaned out the wound, put some gauze over it, secured the gauze, and a little bit later it, healed up normally on its own. All right, so what's your second job that you're going to tell us about?
So my second job that I was going to mention was I worked at Time Magazine for a little while. This was a nice job. This was just before I came to Japan. And in some ways I was kind of hoping it was going to be full-time, but they never really offered me anything. And at that point I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to really stick around to find out. I think they might have eventually, but I don't know. I didn't stick around to find out. And part of it was where I was, there wasn't a lot of pressure, but I could feel the pressure in the room from a lot of other people. My job was not stressful, and I very much appreciated that. But there were a lot of stressed out people there. And I would just look back and say, guys, this is a magazine. I was like, this is not that important. And then I'm realizing, okay, this is not really my passion, this place. Because most of the people there really believed in this weekly news magazine. So yeah, this was not for me. But I mean, I was hired as a tech support person, and then they found out that I had some experience developing FileMaker databases. And this is where I gained a lot more experience developing FileMaker databases. They had a few small databases that would augment their main publishing system for a few different departments. One of the biggest databases I worked on, well, one of the most important anyway, databases I worked on was the ad tracking system. They had a database that would track which ads were on which pages. And Time Magazine was one of the only magazines to target their ads with demographics, right? So Toyota would buy an ad, and if you were elderly, they would sell you the Toyota Avalon ad. But if you were in the younger demographic, you would see the RAV4 ad. So there was all kinds of targeting by demographic, and this was a big deal. And so then the database had to track these different ads and where they were placed. Did they buy the center? Did they buy the back cover? Did they buy the inside front cover? Blah, blah, blah. Lots of different things. So there was a database that would track all of this. And anyway, so I worked on this. I restructured it to be a multi-table database as opposed to the flat database that it was, which served it well, but it needed more. So it was a one-table database, and I made it to be multi-table. And I did this probably just before I left, which is a little bit scary. I restructured the whole database and then left the next day. But that being said, there was the guy who had originally developed the one-table structure was standing over my shoulder and watching me all the way through. So he knew exactly all the changes I was making and agreed with me on them. So as I left, he knew exactly where things were, and if there was any problems, he would pick them up. I have all confidence in that. So, but that also, it was with Quark Express back then, because everybody's using macOS 9, and we were all using Quark Express. And of course, Quark Express was not making the transition to macOS 10, at least fast enough for the publishing industry. So about the year after I left, they were forced to make the migration into Adobe InDesign. But I missed out on all that. That was exciting. But man, that must have been a hurdle. To move the whole writing staff and the whole process over to InDesign must have been something else. But
when they had been used to Quark, yeah, I can
for
only
many years.
imagine.
right? And how, articles would have had to have been started in one and finished in the other, and all of that has to migrate and all the flags and stuff. I was not involved.
The only way I could think that it would work somewhat smoothly is if they said, all right, for this article, starting from this magazine, we're going to be working in Adobe. Mm-hmm. So if you're working on anything in that magazine, start working in Adobe. Until then, continue working in Quark as we always have been.
But I'm not sure they could even have done that, because Adobe InDesign was running in macOS 10, and Quark could only run in macOS Classic, in macOS 9, and it didn't work very well even if you had installed macOS 10 and was running it in the Classic environment. Like, things wouldn't work properly.
Yeah.
So I don't think you could even have done that. I think they had to actually cut over and then upgrade everyone's machine to macOS 10 also on the same day. I think that's what they had to do. I don't exactly remember, but
that's not a life I want.
No. Mm-hmm. And I know they had planned on doing this on a Christmas, because in Christmas there's a week off. And they don't publish the magazine that week, so they get an extra week of break. I don't think they did it the Christmas after I left in 2004. I think they waited to 2005.
Merry Christmas, you get to upgrade all the machines.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's what happened. I didn't stick around for it, but still, that was something else, I think. There was a lot of fun stuff that happened there, but I think my most interesting story working there was I worked there when there was a blackout. It must have been 2004. But there was a blackout in New York City. It affected the whole eastern seaboard. And Time Magazine is definitely downtown, right? It's across from Rockefeller Center, 50th and 6th, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's not near my house, right? Like, I live almost 2 hours away in New Jersey. So it was quite a commute. This is where I talked about having that Alpha Smart earlier on. I would sit and type stuff in the train in the Alpha Smart and then get to Time Magazine and upload it all in. And this is where I started my Audible book collection, because I'd be listening to Audible books on the way as I walk through New York City, which is a little bit dangerous, walking through New York City with headphones in your ears. Probably not the best of ideas. And this is when iPods were picking up too, right? Like, I had one of the original iPods. Anyway, sorry. So there was a big blackout in New York City. It was the Thursday night, I remember, and I had already requested the next day off because I was going to my friend's wedding in Pennsylvania. Mm. It was a bit inconvenient because most people were like, oh, we'll just sleep over in the office and wait till the next day. And they had ordered food and everything. So it was not a bad situation to do that. I have no idea where they would sleep, but anyway, I wasn't worrying about that. But because I had requested the next day off, I actually really did want to get home. But there's a lot of things to consider. If you left the building, you couldn't get back in because the security systems were down. So there was a lot of talk like, you can't leave. You have to, the people that ordered food had to meet them in the lobby and then walk it back up. And of course, you had to take the stairs up and down. And I worked on the 24th floor, I think 24th or 25th. I forget. I think it was 24th, which is not, it's not, the building went up to 60 or 70 or something, but I worked on the 24th floor. And this is the same building. This is the Time and Life building. So it had Sports Illustrated, Entertainment Weekly. All these publications were in the same building. Life magazine. So I found out with another coworker that some of the trains were working to New Jersey, and that New Jersey had gotten a few power generators on and were starting to run the trains going under the river, under the Hudson River. So I called my parents and said, I am heading toward the trains that will take me to Hoboken. So if they could meet me on the other side of the river and drive me home, since it was too late in the evening for the other trains weren't working anymore, the diesel trains that would take me up to near where I would live. I did end up making it down to the PATH station and hopped on the PATH train. And of course, because the switches weren't working properly, the PATH train took me not to Hoboken, took me to the other spot where it goes. I think it's Jersey City. But then from Jersey City, they did move that PATH train to Hoboken. So I did end up in Hoboken. And I was able to find my parents. All of this before cell phones, which is just unbelievable to me that I found my parents in Hoboken to drive me home. Because also, there was a perimeter set around the Hoboken train station so that people couldn't even get into the train station. So my parents couldn't get there. And I just set out on one of the roads out toward the perimeter, and that was the road that they were parked on, and they found me there. So yeah, I was just super amazed that I found my parents, and then we ended up back in my house probably at like 2 a.m. or something like that. So, and then the power all came back on the next day. But being stuck in New York City was quite, even walking the 20 blocks from the Time and Life building to the PATH station on 33rd, 15-ish blocks, was surreal. Like all the lights were out, right? There was tons of people on the street. And this was at I walked down there at like 11 p.m. or something, right? And it took me 3 hours to get to Hoboken. But yeah, it was just very interesting. And New York, I guess people were just kind of celebrating the blackout in some ways out on the streets, kind of. But yeah, it was a very surreal experience. And I'm very glad I made it home. I am very glad I made it home. Definitely a lot of the Lord's leading in there, because I could not, if I had not found my parents on the first street I walked down, it would have been lots of searching, because 180 degrees of searching, and I just picked one street and walked down, and there they were. So, days without cell phones, unbelievable.
How did we survive?
Every time my wife is like, yeah, I'm not going to have my cell phone. I'm like, how in the world am I going to contact you? The stress piles up unbelievably. Anyway, it's just hilarious now thinking about that stuff. Somehow we managed. It's unbelievable. Yeah, Time and Life, very interesting place to work. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the databases. I actually got to talk to FileMaker engineers, but I was so naive at the time. I didn't even know half the commands in FileMaker. So I asked them, hey, wouldn't it be nice if you could do this? And they're like, oh yeah, there's already a command for that. Oh, that's good to know.
And now you are playing around in FileMaker far too much.
I know, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, just built another database for the school in FileMaker just this week.
Yeah, no, all the other jobs I was thinking of, like I said, I have a lot of jobs, but I definitely wanted to tell the ridiculous stories.
Good. Yeah, actually, when you were talking about the food service, I never really had a food service job. But when I was working one year in a camp, I was working the sound booth, but I would sub every once in a while for somebody who worked in the kitchen or as a waiter. And yeah, you're right. It is. You should at least have the experience. And I only subbed. I didn't really, work it full time like those people. But
I mean, okay, so I worked at camps. So I told you I started working when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the only place that would hire me up until I got to a reasonable age was camps. And so 1 year I was the janitor at the camp. 1 year I was working in the kitchen. 1 year I was a camp counselor. 1 year I was a program director. I did pretty much everything at a camp that you can do aside from becoming a lifeguard, which, yeah, probably best.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, working in the kitchen there, even the simplest thing, when you have the tray of cups and you realize that half the students, and yes, I am complaining about the students on this one, half the students don't realize that you need to put the cup face down, because otherwise the cup is going to fill with water when it runs through the dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like that, and understanding just that small level of convenience that you're making somebody else's life easier if you just do it like this. Those are the sort of things that I'm like, oh, it'd be so much easier if you just had that experience and knew what it was like.
Mm-hmm. When I was subbing as the busboy, I would take all of those plastic cups that stack on each other.
Yep.
And see how many you could stack on each other and still fit through the door into the kitchen, right?
Oh,
which is not what everybody who's eating wants to watch. But all of the raiders and all of the dishwashers loved it, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you would lose the top half going through the door because, you'd be tilting it to get it through the door. But of course it would bend on its own because of the tilt.
Mm-hmm.
So the top half would fall off because you're tilting it to go through the door. Anyway. And of course, a few of them would break at that point, even though they're the plastic sturdy cups, right? The Pizza Hut kind of the cups you'd have at Pizza Hut, right?
I know exactly what kind of cups. They're bulk cups that you would buy at a food service supply store, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Frosted plastic with 3 or 4 little bumps at the bottom of each cup so that you could stack them. They wouldn't go all the way down.
Yeah. The cups that are perfectly designed to fit into the dishwashing trays.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep, I participated in that. I don't think I won, but I participated. I got some pretty tall stacks. Didn't get the lean right is what I needed to work on.
I did not participate in that as much because I just wanted to get the job done because I was the only dishwasher that year. So my official job was cooking assistant, which really meant I was bussing, dishwashing, and helping cook.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. No, they had different dishwashers and different bussers.
I mean, we had one person who was only a busser,
Mhm.
and then I was that swing person, but I was also the only dishwasher.
Mhm.
I did that one year and was not at all desiring to do that again because they tried to stretch one person too far. Anyway,
We had interesting jobs.
yes, we did. The main media for today, I decided that I wanted to have Nate watch a movie that I saw last year. It originally came out in theaters last summer, so around July of 2019, I think. The movie we're going to talk about is called Weathering with You. In Japan, it was released as Tenki no Ko, which basically translates to Child of Weather. It is made by the same person who made the movie Your Name, which we talked about in episode 2. I just found it a fantastic movie that I really wanted to talk about on this episode, and because I knew that Nate had enjoyed Your Name, I thought this would be a great movie to talk about some more.
Sounds good.
As always, I think it's important for you to watch the movie before you join in this conversation. But if you've already seen the movie, because it came out a year ago in theaters, I mean, it's very possible that you've seen the movie and you just have forgotten what it's all about. And if you have, I'm going to provide a short summary for you to get you caught up so you can join in this conversation. So the movie centers around Hodoka. He is a young boy who is 16 years old who has ran away from home. He has run away from his home on an island and goes to Tokyo. Having run away from home, he basically is surviving through what money he has brought with him and trying to find a job somewhere that would hire a 16-year-old boy without any sort of identification. As you can guess, this doesn't go so great for him until he finally finds a job in a small magazine publishing company, which is actually owned by a guy named Suga, who ended up saving his life at the beginning of the movie when a very sudden rainstorm hits the ferry that he had been coming to Tokyo on. Now, Hodoka had also, during the time that he tried to find a job, had basically lived in manga cafes and internet cafes and had occasionally fallen asleep in an alleyway. At one point, he does find a gun, which he thinks is a toy, and he happens to also meet a young girl named Hina. Hina, he actually meets when she is working at McDonald's, and she gives him a hamburger because he had clearly not been eating, as he hadn't been employed. After he had been working for the magazine for some time, he happens to come across Hina again, as she seems to be scouted by some rather unscrupulous-looking gentlemen trying to push her into rather unsavory type of job. In trying to grab Hina and get her away from this whole situation, he ends up pulling the gun, which he still thinks is a toy, and pointing it at the man who was trying to take Hina into that type of employment. He ends up trying to scare the man, but ends up firing a shot, which as the moment he realizes that it is a real gun. Hina runs away with Hodoka, and this entire time, since Hodoka had arrived in Tokyo, it had been raining. And Hina says it's hard for you to have witnessed Tokyo and seen how wonderful it is while you're stuck in all this rain. So she then decides to take him up to the roof of the building that they had escaped to and prays for it to be sunny. Immediately, it clears up. She then reveals to Hodoka that she has the power to basically pray the rain away. Because she had been trying to find some sort of employment because she had been fired from her job at McDonald's, Hodoka suggests that she work as sunshine girl is the best way to translate it. Somebody who can make sun appear no matter what type of weather was originally there. So together they make a website, and she begins starting to work around town, basically praying away the rain. She does this for various things. Flea markets, firework festivals, weddings, parties, all sorts of things. Eventually, she decides that she should take a break from this whole thing. And it's about then that a police detective who has been searching for Hodoka happens to come across them and tries to split up Hodoka, Hina, and Hina's brother, who had all been working together. The reason the police wanted to split up Hina and Hodoka and her brother is because Hodoka was an underage boy who had run away from home, and he was trying to return Hodoka, but also because Hodoka had been found on security footage with the gun in his hands. All this to say, eventually they decide to run away together, at which point Hina reveals she believes that she is going to end up having to be a human sacrifice to cause the rain to go away completely forever. She then, the next morning, after having revealed this, has disappeared, and the entire world is sunny again. Then the police break into the hotel room that the three of them had been staying in, and Hodoka escapes from the police and searches for where Hina has gone to. The way to the sky, basically, where she had disappeared to. After some conflicts and various things that happened to prevent him from getting there, he eventually gets there, finds Hina, and tells her that he would rather the sky always remain rainy and that the rain never stop as long as she can remain with him back on Earth. 3 years later, the police have returned Hodoka back to his parents, and he had to finish out his high school back at home. He then decides to return to Tokyo, where he searches for Hina. Tokyo is now significantly under the water because it has not stopped raining for the 3 years since he brought Hina back to Earth. The movie ends with him finding Hina and them finally reuniting after those 3 years. This is another hard one to summarize because there's a lot that happens.
Yes, there is. There's a lot that happens.
It happens so quick and a lot happens.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I think that's where I struggled watching this movie. I was sharing with you earlier that I was having a hard time watching it in one sitting just because I didn't have the time for that.
It is a 2-hour movie.
Watching it in bits and pieces, unfortunately, did take away from the movie, I think, because I wasn't able to suck everything in. I did watch it again a second time. Even that second time I had to break it in half, but still, the second time helped a lot, put everything together.
Yeah, I will say the first time I watched it, I was in a theater, and so my attention was, it is this. That is the only thing here.
I don't think I like this one as much as I like Your Name.
Really?
I think I like Your Name better. And I was trying to work out why that is. The second viewing definitely improved my opinion of this movie.
I do think it has a lot to do with the fact that you never watched it in one sitting.
Maybe. I think that the other thing, though, is that Your Name has the sci-fi twist to it.
Whereas this one has more of a fantasy twist.
Exactly. I think that's one of the other reasons. This one's more fantasy, the other one's more sci-fi.
Gotcha.
I mean, barely. I mean, we're not talking leaps and bounds, but still. The reason that Your Name hits me more is because of the sci-fi twist, I think. Although, interestingly, did you see Mitsuha in this movie?
Not just Mitsuha.
Who else was here? Yotsuha?
So, Taki is in there.
Oh, Taki's in there? I didn't see Taki.
Yeah, Taki's in there. Yotsuha's in there.
Even Yotsuha, too? The younger sister?
She is, but in only a split scene. There's a couple of small little bits, but both of the main characters are in this movie.
Where's Taki?
Taki is the grandson of the old woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They just didn't give him a name, huh?
No, the old woman who they have Obon with, Taki is the one who walks into there with and talks to Hodoka about oh, well, you should get her a present. That's Taki. He's wearing the same shirt.
I guess so.
It is also credited in the credits, that is.
That his name is Taki?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So when does this take place during Your Name, then?
Technically, I looked this up, and technically it takes place in the year 2021, which is apparently a year before Taki and Mitsuha meet back up.
Okay. So almost a year before Taki's events.
Yeah.
Because Mitsuha's in the past, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might have been during Taki's events because remember, they still didn't meet up like right after
Right.
his events. This is like a year before the two of them actually meet back up or so.
Interesting.
Anyway, let's get back to this movie.
Yeah, let's get back to this movie. Okay, so one of the questions I had for you.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I would love to help explain this so that you can like this movie more. First of all, I know you're saying that you like Your Name better. Mm-hmm. Did you not like this movie? You can tell me honestly. I will not be offended.
After the first viewing, I probably would have said yes. After the second viewing, I'm then going to say no.
Okay.
No, I think this movie is enjoyable.
Good.
The second time through, I enjoyed it more. And definitely I was able to pick up on it more. So it definitely, even one thing, I guess, when Hodaka is going to Hina's house the first time, there are two women leaving the gate saying that those two shouldn't live alone.
Yeah.
But at the time, you don't know it's just Hina and Nagi in the house. At the time, you don't know it's just them. So that sentence doesn't make sense. You just think it's two women talking. Mm-hmm. On second viewing, I'm like, oh, he's talking right about Hina and Nagi. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, okay. You're going to pick that up the second time. That was left there for the people who are watching again. Or unless you have really good memory and are piecing that together. And people can do that probably, but I didn't. So it did do better with multiple views. Even looking at the painting on the ceiling the second time and like, wow, that exactly matches what happens later on. You know, the dragon-looking thing up in the sky that swallows her, seems like, right?
Actually, that dragon thing is, if you look in the background of the very first scene in the movie, it's there.
Oh, yeah.
So I think for me, the fact that, like, again, because I watched it in one sitting, that also stands out to me.
Yeah, that's right. She does get swallowed up in the first scene, right? So I think it improved with multiple sittings, which I'm pleased with. But one of the questions I have right at the beginning is, why was Suga even on the ferry? Why would he go? I'm assuming that Hodaka comes from one of the Izu Islands that are fairly, some of them are very far away from Tokyo, even though they're actually considered part of Tokyo.
According to this, it's like Kozushima.
Where's that one?
It's in Izu.
It's not that bad, actually. Oh, it's near Nijima. I've actually looked at going to Nijima once. I actually stayed in Oshima, which is just north. But yeah, I recognized the Hamamatsucho ferry terminal because I've been there once. Well, when I went to Oshima, I went through that terminal. So, yeah, so I figured it was one of those Izu islands. But I'm just curious, why was even Suga on that ferry? That is interesting. Why would he have gone to visit that?
The only thing I can think of is actually how I headcanoned it was, given that he was doing this whole magazine thing, he was probably talking to one of his sources.
Yeah, doing some interview out there. I mean, that is kind of where I'm coming to the headcanon too, is that he must have been there to interview somebody. But yeah, it's interesting. And I don't think they explain it in the movie. Tell me if I'm wrong. But is Hodaka running from abuse? Because he's got a lot of Band-Aids on.
Yeah, they do not explain it, but that is exactly what I was thinking it was.
But then why do the police... I guess he didn't tell him it was abuse. He hasn't shared that information with the police.
Yeah.
And one of my last questions is, why does Hina even lie about her age to Hodaka? Is she just keeping up the pretense? She wants to be older?
I think, first of all, she's already lied to a couple of people about her age at that point.
Right. She's just going along with it, right? This is what she's been saying, so she keeps saying it.
Yeah, because if you keep saying it, then everybody will believe it, kind of thought, maybe.
Right. Well, and then she doesn't look weird with her brother, too, right? Oh, she's already 18. She's going to be with her brother. It's okay.
Yeah. It's the fact that she says she's 18, but she's really only 14 at the beginning of the movie and 15 by the end of the movie. Or, well, 15 by the end of the main part of the movie.
Right. End of the main storyline.
Because it does skip ahead 3 years at the end.
Which, it didn't say she was graduating, right? I guess she might have another year. It depends.
She might have another year because it would mean that she would be 18, which means that she could either be in her final year of high school or graduating at the same time.
One of the things I really liked was the animation again.
Oh, the animation is beautiful.
Yeah, just the way the camera moves, well, the way they have the animated camera move, just great ways of doing it. Although I think it bugged me a little bit that some scenes were standout computer graphics, that they weren't hand-drawn. Especially the fireworks one. That one bugged me a little bit. Again, it was watching it the second time. I was like, well, actually, this is very pretty, but it stands out too much that fireworks scene is computer graphics. I mean, I still think it's a gorgeous scene. I love the camera flying, but I was like, man, that's computer graphics, and while all the rest of it is hand drawn. And I do wonder. I mean, I am making the assumption that people are still doing the drawing, when I guess maybe they might have computers doing the drawing for most of it too. So,
well, it is both hand drawn and CG. So they do use both throughout the movie.
One of the ones where I really liked it, and I wonder if it's the different frame rate too, right? Computer graphics is probably faster frame rate, and hand-drawn is not as much, right?
Possibly.
One of the ones where it sticks out to me too, but this one I really liked it, was when Hodaka was climbing the stairs. I think in the last...
Yeah.
In the last scene, and it's spinning around him, and you can tell he's hand-drawn, but the building looks computer animated as it's flying around, which for some reason that one I really liked it, even though I was like, wow, this one sticks out to me, because he actually seems like a different frame rate, I think, than the building spinning. I didn't actually go frame by frame to see, but another one I like the camera move on, and this seemed to be more hand-drawn possibly. Again, I'm making assumptions, but I liked it when the motorcycle rides up right beside the Toyota Hiace. When Natsumi is driving the motorcycle to get away, and she drives up right next to the Toyota van, right along the side, which motorcycles do all the time here in Japan. But, you got the feeling of tightness. I liked that one. That one looked a little bit more hand-drawn to me, but I'm making an assumption probably.
Yeah.
That was a neat scene.
The big thing that a lot of CG was used for was the rain.
Oh, okay. But interesting, it looked more hand-drawn most of the time.
Yeah.
But it did look very pretty. Especially when they were focusing on the ground.
I'm looking at part of an interview from the director. He said basically he chose to make a more supernatural feel for this one, as opposed to a science fiction angle that he used for Your Name. He's identifying that very fact that, whereas Your Name had that sci-fi feel, this was definitely more of a supernatural or fantasy. I actually put this movie on par with Your Name.
Okay. So you're holding it at the same level.
I hold it at the same level. I don't say one is better than the other. I think both are fantastic movies. I definitely would say, yes, this movie does have more of a fantasy, more of a supernatural feel. It also has a larger emphasis on the romance than necessarily Your Name does. Your Name still has an emphasis on it, but I feel like this one is a little bit more overt. But I think they're both fantastic movies that really just come across and have a great world that they've built, and I think they tell the story well. That's at least where I come down.
But I would say that the relationship is overt because it's central to the plot more in this one.
Yes, and also I think the other reason why it's more overt would be because they're in front of each other.
Well, yeah, that too, yeah. You mean instead of in different states or prefectures? Yes.
And separated by time.
Yeah.
Separated by time, space, different things.
But again, the relationship is what's driving Hodaka's actions. One of the things that suffered from a stalled first viewing was my feelings on Suga.
Oh, yeah.
Because very early on in the movie, he's portrayed, especially in the first few scenes, he's portrayed as somebody you don't want to do business with, really. Like he's sponging off of the boy. And then later, when he turns to Suga as a last resort, I was like, oh man, this is really the last resort. And I think I stopped around there. That's about the 20-minute mark, and I think that's where I had to stop the first time. So I was like, right. So he fell to that level. But actually, Suga is, watching the whole movie, Suga is not really that bad, right?
No, he's
actually trying to help him. He's not trying to help him a lot, but he is trying to help him.
He's basically keeping an eye out for him. He's not like going out on a limb, but he's helping him. And actually, one of the things that stuck out to me this time in watching it was the transition throughout the montage scene of him getting used to working for Suga, watching him at how he is acting towards Suga and how he is acting towards Natsumi at the beginning and how it is at the end of that little montage, and how they basically seem like kind of a wacky chosen family, again, to use that phrase, where he's actually looking up at Suga, basically what can only be described as like happiness just to be around him. And so for me, seeing that transition, especially with the fact that I knew where the arc was going to go, I felt like that was so much more poignant this time around for me.
Yeah, I think that's because I had 24 hours to think that Suga was not a great guy, and it took me a little while longer to destroy that mental picture than you would if you were sitting in a theater watching it in one go.
So here's the other thing. We've talked about the fact of where my Japanese level is. When it aired a year ago in theaters, there was no translation. So I was having to pay attention to everything. Since I had no subtitles, I was looking for everything, trying to keep up with the language, being assisted by social cues that they were giving. So I was paying hyper attention to everything. So that might also be why I noticed certain things and why I was drawn in a little bit more, because I was being hyper aware. I think that in watching it a second time, I feel like it did not diminish it for me to have the subtitles. In fact, I found out a few things that I had missed because I misheard a word or something like that. But I think for me, because I was being hyper aware, I was watching for certain things, and those cues did stick out to me a little bit more. One of the things I love about these movies is how well they capture Tokyo and how well they capture Japan.
Yep.
They look very much like the real places that they are drawing.
Oh, yeah, I recognize a lot of those places.
I actually found out that the building that a lot of the stuff takes place on was actually recently torn down.
Oh, yeah? Really? That building in Yoyogi?
Yeah, the building in Yoyogi. The reason being is after the 2011 earthquake, it got pretty badly damaged and never really fully repaired, and so they decided to finally take it down in 2019. I'm sure there was some other reasons behind it getting taken down.
They got to take it down before all the fans climb up to the top.
Yeah, basically. But it's right near the Docomo building in Yoyogi.
Interesting. And the building that she climbs up to do the fireworks one, that's Roppongi Hills.
Yep, because that whole thing was, trying to remember the name of the fireworks.
Jingugayan.
Yeah. I loved the character interactions in this one, though. I think that's the thing that always brings me in all of his movies is his characters are fun to watch them interact. Especially seeing the interactions between Hodoka, Hina, and
Nagi.
Nagi, yeah. The three of them are just a great little family. And I loved watching the three of them interact in everything that they did. Even to the point where Hodoka started referring to Nagi as senpai.
Right.
Was just great.
Which is generally something you only do to older people.
Yeah. Senpai is basically the term that you use towards like people who are older or more experienced in some way. And so the fact that the 16-year-old is telling the elementary school student that he is older or more experienced in something says a lot. Again, I just love the interactions. I mean, Natsumi, when she's been basically bopping around from, like, she's been trying to find a job the entire movie.
Job's the job.
And then at the final bit where she decides to grab Hodoka and race him through the town, and the thing that she decides to yell and goes, hey, I think this is what really fits me. I should be a motorcycle cop. After she's just basically bust him out of the police station and run away from the police.
I love his next line. They'll never hire you now.
That's the thing, is that's why I love these movies, is because his characters and his worlds and his everything about it is just so much fun to watch, so enjoyable, that I just love. I love everything about it. Which is why I wanted to have you watch it. And I do think that I don't want to be judgy, but I do think that you did the movie a bit of a disservice by not watching it in one go.
Well, yeah, I agree. I wish I didn't have to do it that way, but yeah.
Yeah. I just think that it would have been better if you had watched it in one go, but, you know, I understand. You have a life.
Yep.
And that is something that, you know, and I do think that also because of the way that your interests lie, because I love fantasy novels, and I do understand that you tend to be more sci-fi and a little bit more reticent towards fantasy.
Right. And time travel is one of my favorite sci-fi topics, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that one, Your Name hit the right buttons.
Yeah, and so I think that might be a big thing for you then too.
Mm-hmm.
And it might also be the fact that following Your Name, if you weren't comparing it to Your Name.
Oh yeah, this is good stuff. And so the second viewing helped it for me because that put all the pieces together.
And I think that's the big thing right there is when you're watching it, you're thinking of it as comparing it as like the second movie from the same guy who made Your Name.
Mm-hmm.
You're comparing it to Your Name. That's one of the things that might end up maybe making it not stand as high. That being said, I'm definitely in the opinion where I think that it is equal to Your Name, and I've heard a lot of people say that they think it's above Your Name.
Oh, okay.
So I think it really comes down to taste on this one.
Right.
So I've talked about the fact that I enjoy this movie to a couple of people, and several of them did say that they enjoyed it more than Your Name.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it does come down to taste.
Let's get to this later stuff because I think I actually like the ending.
The ending is fantastic.
I was a little bit worried because I was like, where is this going to go? Right. I think it's great at the very end of the movie where he's questioning whether or not he made any changes. And he decides that he did. He made the change. And now, okay, so I'm going to say my view. I think he made the change for his life. And that's all that really matters. Whether he made the change that affected Tokyo or not is something else. And something that's the fantasy part probably, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, he made the change for his life. And that's all that really matters. And I think it was best that he made the change for his life. Whether it sunk Tokyo or not is another question. But I think that it was good that he made the change for his life.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier when I was giving the summary that he said, I don't care if the sun never shines again. I just want you in my life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that questioning his entire time, he was questioning whether, yes, did it change anything? But also, I think he might have been thinking about having probably heard about what was happening to Tokyo for the past 3 years and yet being unable to even go and visit Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was on probation.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the thought of he's probably turned other people's lives around is where his mind probably got stuck. His decision to keep her on Earth was something he decided, and it not only decided it for him, but decided it for the entire town.
Because the movie does say, well, this part of Tokyo was underground. So, it's not that you changed...
Yeah, so the other side of things is, they do say this part of Tokyo was always under the water. It was just through human intervention and changes in the weather that we were able to build on it. Mm-hmm. So they say that right up front. And then another person says, the world's just crazy. I mean, things happen, times change, and humans grow and adapt from it. I think both those things are true. But I also would say that his choice probably did affect things, but I think that it's the idea of, yes, it's changed, but also I think it comes down to humans grow and adapt and learn from it. The fact that one of the things that I really enjoyed seeing was, yes, so in the final scenes, Tokyo is submerged. Mm-hmm. There's large parts of Tokyo that are clearly underwater at this point, and yet life goes on. Mm-hmm. People are talking about enjoying looking forward to picnics.
Yes, I thought that was great, actually. Mm-hmm.
And that idea of, okay, even if it is partially on him, because the only reason I say it might be partially on him is because it does say that it never stopped raining for 3 years. So, I mean, based on the way that they set up this world, I would think that at least partially his decision did affect that. But I also think that the other people were right. Yes, Tokyo was underwater at a certain point. Yes, the world and the weather can change. And I think also it comes down to, hey, humans and their interaction with the weather can have an effect on the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, one of the things I was thinking is that this is a very interesting movie for 2020, for when I'm watching it, and how the world changes from one day to another.
Oh.
Was one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching it. I was like, this is the catastrophe that this movie is portraying for Tokyo.
Mm-hmm. It comes down to things change, things happen, but people still look at the world and go, all right, this is how the world is. Let's find our new normal. Let's still not give up on living life. I just read that interview I was looking at earlier. I just saw a part that says that the director added that he had been influenced by the impact of climate change on Japan, particularly the increase in rainfall during summer months.
Well, that was another thing, is that all of July basically rained, right? Is that if you watched this movie last July, especially toward the end of July, you'd be like, oh my goodness, this is coming true.
Yeah, well, that being said, I watched it basically 2 Julys ago now.
And did it rain much that July? I don't remember.
I don't think so. This summer was so much worse. It just never stopped raining here.
If you watch this movie in late July this year, you'd be like, oh goodness, it's coming true.
Everything's real. But yeah, I would say that for me, did their decision change anything? Even if they hadn't made that decision, it might have happened eventually. Maybe it just sped it up.
I think it was definitely interesting how they portrayed Tokyo sunken, like you're saying.
I will say that seeing a sunken Tokyo, that just seems like a great setting to put a story in, of life after everything has changed.
It surprises me that I've never thought... I've seen artists' renditions of sunken New York City, right? So I've never thought of a sunken Tokyo. So I think that was just a nice, mind-bending picture to think about. Like, ooh, what would that all mean, right? How would even she lives at Tabata, right? How would that even work? The Yamanote line looks underwater for a lot of it. How would Yamanote being one of the major routes that people travel and train, how would people even get around if Yamanote's half underwater?
And I like how basically all of what would have been trains turned into boats.
Yeah.
So the last thing I was going to say is another thing that I thought is fantastic, but is also fantastic in Your Name, the music. The music is very well done. The artist who did the music for this one also did the music for Your Name.
Yeah. The music yet again fit well to everything going on.
It's a band called Radwimps, I think is how you say it.
Yeah, I wonder how you say it too. I've never heard somebody actually say it.
I'm looking at the romanization, I guess is the best way to say it, of the word, and it's Radwimps. So, the band's name was formed by the combination of rad and wimp. So, I think Radwimps is about as close as we're going to get.
Yep, interesting words to put together.
Interesting name for a band, but, the music fits so well.
They've got the talent for it, so yeah, it's good.
I just wanted to mention that one more time, that the band and the music choice is just fantastic, well put together, and fits the movie so well. So, I know you said that you still like Your Name better. I know you said you thought this movie was good.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Like, great? Like, would watch this again? Like, what kind of...
Yeah, I would watch it again. I think one of the things I was even realizing just now, as we were talking about it with the characters, I think one of the things that's really good about this movie is the way that you continually learn information about the characters. I think that's one of the things, I think that's kind of the point you were bringing up, but very slowly you keep learning more about the characters, especially after you make an assumption, like Suga, but you learn something that he's actually willing to help him, and then you learn that he has a daughter, and then you learn that he had a wife that died. You continually peel back the layers of these characters, and they become more and more interesting. Even you learn about Hina and Nagi, and then you learn more about them specifically, and then you learn about their mother. Like, I think that storytelling has a lot going for it. So yeah, I like it. I just don't like it as much as Your Name, I guess.
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's just not as much as that.
And that's the thing that I was hoping to hear, because the way it sounded when you were first describing it, it sounded like you were not too thrilled with this, but liking it, but not quite as good as Your Name. That is about where I expected you to land on this one.
Because in watching it in pieces, the mythology stood out, or the fantasy aspect stood out a lot.
Whereas when you watch it in a go, it's the characters that tend to stand out. The mythology is a vehicle for the plot, right. But the characters take center stage. Next time, I think you're going to bring something to me, so why don't you introduce it?
So next time, we will discuss Rear Window, which is an Alfred Hitchcock movie from 1954. So it is a good movie. I would recommend watching it before our next episode. And we said we were going to talk about home screens this week, and we didn't. We will talk about them next week.
We had a lot of things to talk about this week, so we thought it'd be best to save that for next week.
Yeah, you have a lot more prep before recording than I do.
Yeah, but you get all the stuff afterwards.
Yeah. 'Tis true. Yeah, I just have to make sure I've watched the media or listened to the media.
Yeah, and I have to have...
Summary.
I have to have a summary, the game picked out. You know, can you blame me when I lose my mind every single week? I'm looking at my teacup and realizing I have to replace this teacup.
Oh, yeah? It's cracking?
I can definitely see it's cracking because I poured tea in it, and there is a very significant crack that is showing up and has some light brown stain coming through the... Yeah. I'm like, it's okay. It's definitely like the Daiso cups that they bought for me when I first moved in, and I just have somehow held on to them through all of the moves that I've had.
I was worried you were saying significant, and I was like, oh, significant puddle, significant. what's going to be significant?
Just a crack.
Good.
And it's there, but it's not like getting liquid even on my desk. So, it's holding together and probably will hold together throughout this entire cup of tea, but I won't hold my breath on it lasting too much longer.
What's beeping?
What? Something beeping?
It went away now. So it must have been somebody outside backing up or something?
Oh, it might have been my dryer.
Oh, okay.
I forgot that I had started my dryer. I actually have another wound on my knee that, again, should have gotten stitches, but I was like, I don't need stitches for that. And yeah, probably should have gotten stitches. That one bothers me when lots of rain happens. Changes in the weather.
Changes in temperature?
Yeah, because of the pressure. One of those things where I can go, I feel the rain coming on. My knee's acting up. Because that one is on my knee. I don't know if I had survived if my stories were all like that.
Yeah. It's a good thing you didn't work in a chainsaw company either, right?
No. Although I did learn to juggle those.
Oh, really?
No. I never learned how to juggle chainsaws.
Yeah, me neither.
Good.
Neither bowling pins. I stuck with beanbags.
I stuck with the air light scarves. Because that's my level of juggling.
You can't even hit your head with those.
No.
I was looking for files because I had, just before I left Time Magazine, they were walking down the hallway saying, hey, we need extras for a photo. Come get your photo taken. They just, walking down the hallway. I was like, okay, sure. So I went down to the photographer area on that floor, and sure enough, they had a whole bunch of things set up. So I got my photo taken. The magazine, of course, came out, the next day, right? It's that fast, right? No, it came out 2 days later, something like that. And sure enough, there I am in a line of people waiting for a movie when, of course, I was just standing there all by myself getting my photo taken. But they arranged all these people. They arranged all these people in an order, looking like it's a line for a movie. So that was quite fun. So yeah, I am pictured in Time Magazine sometime in 2004. In America, it's the cover with, actually, Jesus happens to be on, a painting of Jesus happens to be on that cover. It was like, was Jesus real or something like that was the title of the magazine. But anyway, I'm in there somewhere. They were talking about some movie thing they were talking about, and so I'm on the line of movies. So anyway, and my beard is way too big.
Your beard was too big?
Oh yeah, my beard was too big. I was single. It worked.
Oh, so that... No one to tell you that it's too long?
And my mom must have been very polite at the time.
So how closely related to the Giving Tree is this?
Oh, very different.
Sorry, I had to ask.
I heard a summary of the Giving Tree.
It's an abusive relationship with a tree. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, which I was like, wow, yeah, I guess it is. I don't necessarily agree with it that strongly, but I do see where you can interpret it that direction.
I heard that from somebody, and yeah, it's the fact that it is one person saying, hey, I need this thing from you. Mm-hmm. Hey, I need this thing from you. Hey, I need this thing from you. And never giving anything to the tree.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think they're missing other parts of the story in that interpretation, but That's okay.
Yeah, it is an interpretation of the story. When I read the story, I always put myself in the tree's position rather than the boy's position.
Right.
I would want to be a person who would be giving of myself sacrificially. But the thing is, if you are in a relationship with somebody who is doing that and taking advantage of you and doing it in bad faith, I think that's where it can easily become an abusive relationship. And so it really depends on what is the boy.